Hello everyone, good morning or good evening. My name is AJ and I study BSBA Management Information System of OED. And this is my video presentation for the first part of the course project for Computer Programming 1. So for this video presentation, I've chosen the second group of topics to discuss, and they are through the loops, dimensions of primitive data types, and the introduction to functions or procedures. I will start with the first topic, through the loops. So first, looping is a repetition of series of statements based on the provided condition. One pass of a loop is considered an iteration, and an iteration allows us to simplify our algorithm by stating that we will repeat certain steps until told otherwise. So looping is a great way for us to save effort and time when we code. So instead of coding multiple coutts, it's better to just use the loop statement. Now there are four phases of a looping statement. So the first one is initialization. It's where the counter is set as an initial value and it manages the whole flow of the loop. The second one is the body. It's basically just the statements inside the code block. We have the condition. It's the expression. It's where the expression is evaluated and dictates whether the loop should start or continue. And lastly, we have the increment or decrement. The increment is where the variable is added by a certain constant, and its counterpart is decrement, wherein the variable is subtracted by a certain constant. For C++, we have three looping statements that we can use. So the first one is for loop, while loop, and do while loop. First, we have for loop. So the construction of this one is the initialization, condition, and the increment and decrement phases happen within the same parentheses of the statement. This one is range-based, and the only thing that is separated from the whole loop statement is the body. We have the while loop. The condition is evaluated before the body is executed. Now, the initialization phase does not happen within the looping statement or the parentheses of the statement, and the increment and decrement happens at the end of the body. For do while loop, the initialization happens outside of the actual looping statement. That should be the statements within the body are executed first, and the condition is evaluated, so it's checking whether to continue the loop or stop it altogether. So all these three looping statements have the same purpose. That is, of course, to repeat a series of statements. However, they just differ in their constructions. Okay, so for this video presentation, I'll only be focusing on for loop. This time I'll be showing you how to use for loop in order for us to get the Fibonacci series or sequence. Alright, so the Fibonacci sequence, it's a series of numbers where a number is the addition of the last two numbers, and it starts with 0 and 1. Alright, so we first declare variables. So we have for, we have the integer num, first, second, and the next term. Now the Fibonacci series, as we know, starts with 0 and 1. So they are first 0, second term is 1. Next, we get the user input, and that's variable num. Now we get the Fibonacci series using the for loop. So in this loop, the counter is set to 0. The condition should be less than the number of the user input, and the increment, we have this one. So all of these three occur inside the parentheses, as we've discussed earlier. So the first one, we have cout first, that is 0. The next term will be the sum of the first term and second term. After the first increment, so it will show you 0 and 1, and the next term would be 1, because 0 plus 1 is 1. For the second iteration, so the first term will now be the second one, which is 1, and the second term will be the next term, which came from the sum of the first two digits. So that would be 1 plus 1 and 2. Alright, so if we input 5 here, so this will be the output. So the fifth term of the Fibonacci series is 3. So 0 and 1, the first increment, the answer is 1. Second increment, 1 plus 1, 2. And third increment is 1 plus 2, 3. So that's how we get the term of the Fibonacci series. Alright, now we move on to dimensions of data types. Now from the previous modules, we've learned about the primitive data types: int, short, long, bool, float, double, and character data types. But for this one, we'll be focusing on arrays. So an array is a variable that can contain more than one value of similar data types. So note that it can only store values of similar data types. So let's say that we have an array of integers. So if you assign a non-integer value in the array, then it would result to exceptions or errors. Now for one-dimensional arrays, we use the syntax data type, variable name, and the size it contains. For 2D arrays, we use this syntax, so we have two sizes. When we assign arrays, we use the syntax variable name index equals the value, and we call out the array by the syntax cout variable name index. And we'll be using array of characters to form a triangle. So this is an activity from one of the laboratory exercises of Computer Programming 1. So I'm just going to use it over here as well. Alright, so for this one, the first for loop, we use it to get the spaces on the left side of the triangle, and the second for loop is used to call out the characters. So we have here a maximum of 10 characters for the height, so that would be the letters A to J. So as a result, we get this. So let's say I input 8, and that creates a triangle made out of characters from A to H. Lastly, we have functions or procedures. So a function is a separate code block which performs a specific task in which it can accept inputs from the other code blocks. We're already familiar with the main function since we've already been using that or working with that since the third laboratory exercise. Now functions can return back values which can be a result of the actions performed within the function. Now we have 4 components of a function. The first one is the function name. So it's the alias that we use as reference to the function. We have the parameters. This is used to enumerate the input values of the function. The body is just a group of statements within the code block. And we have the return type. It's the data type which the function shall return as its final execution. So for this one, I'll be using a void function Since it's a void function, it doesn't have to have a return type at the end of the function. Alright, again, it's a void function, so it doesn't have any return type. But for this void function, we have the function name, multiply, the parameters, a and b, and the body we have over here. For the main function, I used the for loop statement to get the user input. So we'll just get 2 from the user, and we multiply those 2 integers. So we call the function out over here. So that's multiply integer 0 and integer 1. And output should be this. So let's say 8 is the first digit, the other one is 7. So the product of 8 and 7 is 56. That is it for this video presentation. Thank you so much, and I'll be adding the link to the second part of the course projects for Computer Programming 1 here in this video as well. Thank you.